Hi, I'm back with Psalms 23:2 today, and so I'm excited to talk about Psalms 23:2. Last week we talked about Psalms 23:1. The Lord is my shepherd, and so I shall not want. I have everything I need, and so that was Psalms 23:1. Psalms 23:2. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. Just letting that sink in for a minute. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. In my Living Bible, it says, He lets me rest in the meadow grass, and He leads me beside the quiet streams. And I was just thinking, I read something one day, and it was talking about where He said, He makes me to lie down in green pastures. It doesn't say He invites me to lay down. It doesn't say He asks me to lay down. Now in King James, it says He makes me to lie down. And then as you saw in the Living Bible, it says He lets me rest in the meadow grass. And I was just thinking about how many times, so I was reading about sheep, and they are the type of animal that if there's anything going on out of the ordinary, they cannot rest. So they won't rest if they're afraid. They won't rest if they're really hungry or thirsty. They won't rest. If parasites are bothering them, they won't rest. They'll get anxious. And I also read one time where the shepherd had to look for good pasture ahead of time. Especially back in the Bible days, in the area they were in, a lot of times there weren't green pastures. They were, a lot of rocks, a lot of briars, a lot of things that will hurt the sheep and also not feed them well. And so the shepherd would look ahead and find green pastures. And even if he had to clear the land, sometimes shepherds would clear the land so that there would be green pastures for their sheep. And I was thinking how that's so true of us. We get so busy that we don't want to rest. We are busy about many things. And we don't want to rest. We don't want to take time to lay down and just, do nothing. We're just busy. We're busy, so busy about so many things. The story in the Bible of Mary and Martha, and Martha was so busy. But Mary, she chose to sit at Jesus' feet. Our pastor spoke on sitting at Jesus' feet recently, and it really spoke to my heart. Just taking time to really sit at Jesus' feet. And, I just think how that He makes us to lay down in green pastures. Sometimes He has to make us. Sometimes He can lead us to green pastures and we'll go willingly, but a lot of times He has to make us lay down in green pastures and rest, because He knows that it's in those times that we get our nourishment, we get our strength back. We keep going, and then all of a sudden we crash, and a lot of times we're upset because we're crashing, and sometimes it's Him making us lay down and rest. At least I can say for me, because sometimes I just keep going, and then all of a sudden I'm sick or something like that. And I'm not saying He makes you sick, but He uses that time sometimes, I think, to make us lay down and rest. I was thinking back probably, I guess, about a month ago when it snowed. And it snowed a lot, and it caused everybody to have to just stay home. And we don't like that. We can do it for a day, but after that, we're ready to get back out. We're ready to, get back to doing our routine. But the snow caused everybody to just kind of sit down and rest. And then I went out one day. I was doing a delivery for our business, Pioneer Propane. And I went out, and the snow was everywhere, and it was so pretty. And then I was just riding, and I was thinking, wow, the snow is so pretty. It's beautiful I was passing farms, and it was just laid out over the fields, and it was beautiful. And I thought, wow, it's so beautiful. And then I pulled into a place. It was like a parking lot, and the snow was all pushed up into big heaps, piles, and it was all black, and there was icy patches all over the parking lot. And I thought, this looks terrible. And I got to thinking how that when it snows, a lot of times, instead of resting, we want to get out, we want to shovel, and we want to clear the driveway, and we want to do this, and we want to do that. And a lot of times we fall, we do all kinds of things, we get hurt. We just make a bigger mess out of everything, when really he was just asking us to rest. Just, rest. And rest is a command. He said, keep the Sabbath holy. And, he wants us to rest. And so that's a little off. I'm kind of veering off. But in Psalms 23:2, he makes me to lie down. He makes me rest in those green pastures. And while I'm there, he's feeding me. I was thinking about, how he feeds us when we're going to church, when we're doing our devotions, when we're reading our Bible, when we're praying. He's feeding us green pastures because he knows there's a day when the shepherd has to make the sheep move from one field to another. And sometimes in the moving process, you're going through mountains and valleys and areas where it's not as good pasture. And maybe there's, steep cliffs, and there's danger, and there's different things that are going to come up. But he feeds us in the green pastures first. He also, it says, he makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. The still waters. He refreshes us with his word. He refreshes us with his spirit. He says, I'm the living water and the breath of life. And, so he feeds us in those pastures, in those green pastures. He causes us to rest. Because in the resting, he's given us strength again for the journey. And then he's refreshing us with that water by the still waters. I read where sheep are thirsty, and they can go a long time without water because they can actually get water and moisture from the dew off the grass. But there comes a time when they need refreshing. They need, good water. And I believe that's what it's saying. He leads us by the still waters. Because then it goes on, and we'll go on to the next verse next time. But he makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. And I just think so many times in life we don't want to rest. We don't want to take that time. Back to the story of, I kind of got sidetracked, but when I was out making those runs, and I saw the parking lot, and the snow was just a mess. And I was just, praying that day. I was riding in the truck by myself, and I was just praying. And I really felt him speak to my spirit and say, this is a season of rest. And he was speaking to me, to my spirit, because I was a little restless. I was, anxious and trying to work out things the way I wanted them to work out, or maybe the way I thought they should, or whatever. And he was saying to me, rest. This is a time in your life of rest. Things will get busy again. There'll be another season of life. But today, I want you to rest. And And I also felt him speaking, when you try to work things out, when you try to go out in the snow and shovel, when you tried to go to the mailbox and you fell flat on your face, when you try to do things, when it's you, then it becomes a mess. But when the Lord is in it and you're resting in him, it brings such peace, such calm to your life, and it doesn't end in a mess. When you're letting him lead, when you're letting him guide, just allowing him to lead and guide, lead me to the green pastures, so I can rest. Lead me beside the still waters so I can drink of his spirit, of his word, of his will, of his plan for my life. It just really changes things up when we can rest and have peace. And I'm looking at my notes. In Matthew 11:28, it says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And then in Philippians 4:6 and 7, "Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." Joshua 21:44, "And the Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to the fathers. Not one of all their enemies had withstood them." And I was thinking, sometimes we're just so stubborn. We won't rest. We refuse to rest. You know how it is. I have 3 children, but my oldest, Elisha, when he was little, he did not like to take naps. And he would not hardly take a nap. It was, when he was a baby, he did. But once he got to be like 2 or 3, I wanted him to have nap time. I had Isaiah by this time, and I wanted Elisha to take a nap when Isaiah would take his nap, and that way I would have some peace and quiet. But I remember he wouldn't go to sleep. And finally I had to say, okay, this is what we're doing. If you don't want to go to sleep, you don't have to go to sleep, but you have to stay in your bed, in your room. You can read, you can color, but you have to stay in your bed and you have to be quiet. You can't get up out of your bed and come downstairs where I was at that time. Their rooms were upstairs and I was downstairs. You can't be playing with your toys in your room. You have to stay in your bed and rest. And that's how we kind of got through that period of time, because I taught him that, okay, I can't make you go to sleep, but you do have to have this time of rest so that this evening you'll be in a better mood and you'll be able to play. My second son was totally different. At 2 and 3 years old, he would come, pull on my clothes and say, I want to go to sleep. He wanted his rest. He wanted to take a nap. He didn't cry when I put him down. I could lay him down. He wanted to be in his bed. He was a little particular. So if I was out somewhere else, he would miss his nap and he wouldn't sleep as well. But as long as we were at home and I was putting him in his bed, he would rest. And I just think sometimes we're like my oldest. We get stubborn and we're like, we're not going to rest. We're going to make this work out on our own. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And all the while he's saying, no, come to me. Come to me and I will give you rest. I will give you peace. And so just remember today, he makes us lie down in green pastures. He wants us to rest. And he leads us beside the still waters. He wants to refill us with his water, with his spirit. He is the living water, and he'll give us strength for the journey that's ahead. Because we're all on a journey, and life is a journey, and one day we're up and one day we're down. And so we have to rest in the periods and seasons when he has us in green pastures, leading us beside the still waters, and draw strength and store that word in our heart. That word have I hid in my heart that I might not sin against thee. store it in our hearts, store the word in our hearts, so that in the green pastures and when we're by the still waters, so that when we hit the next valley or we hit the next steep mountain, we can cross over knowing in strength, in his, leaning on him, leaning upon his word, upon his promises. He's good. He's faithful. Remember, he's the good shepherd. And so in all things for us, he is good. He is faithful. He will carry us through. But sometimes we need to just rest in him, lean on him, let him direct us, let him direct our paths. And so that's what I have for today. I hope you guys are enjoying this warmer weather. I've got the doors open and it's definitely warmer. It's kind of overcast today, but still warmer than it's been. And so springtime is coming, and that's a great thing. So I love you guys, and I hope you enjoy your week.